Good afternoon. You're listening to Gambling with an Edge. Now here are your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is attorney Bob Nersesian, who is also a Blackjack Hall of Fame member. Bob Nersesian, welcome back to Gambling with an Edge.
Always fun, guys. It's been so long. It was last week.
So, one of the questions we had is, what is the Gaming Control Board? And do you have anything to say about that in Nevada?
What is the Gaming Control Board?
I
understand what you're saying, I think. And a little primer on how it's all set up here in Nevada is we have a gaming commission, we have the Gaming Control Board, and then we have the people who work for the Gaming Control Board, the enforcement agents, persons like that, and some of the regulators, etc. Now, the actual laws are written by the legislature, but this is an administrative agency, the gaming industry in Nevada, and as an administrative agency, there have to be regulations. People would think that the Gaming Control Board, who is your first resort when you think of gaming in Nevada, would be writing these regulations. They would be wrong and they would be right. The regulations are actually proposed and drafted by, are done by and supposedly drafted by the Gaming Control Commission, which is not the board. It's different people. The Gaming Control Board, however, gets together and with their lobbyists, if you will, which would be they take input from their enforcement people, they take input from IGT, they take input from the big casinos, and then they would write the regulations as they see fit and forward them to the board. There is not necessarily an oversight body like you get in the state legislature, which would be the legislative something bureau, but nobody's actually reading these laws or checking them for actual application to the depth that you would think, because they're being written by the people who are to be regulated for the most part. So then the board will send it over to the commission and say, we think these regs should be adopted, and do you think these political appointees over at the commission are putting their nose to the grindstone and looking at all the ramifications and the negative consequences or unanticipated consequences of what they're passing? Well, maybe you do. I don't think so, but really I can't speak to it with any certainty, except that I know that some of these regulations make no sense at all. And I'll tell you one in a second. So what we have here, and here's the question of the moment. What is the Gaming Control Board? Well, there's a lot of different answers to give, and the one that probably doesn't come to mind, but is the true nature of this beast, is that it is a consumer protection agency. The consumers being the gamblers, the people who put up the money. It is there to make sure that the games are run honestly and cleanly, and that the people in Nevada get a fair shake. It's what we all depend on at our most base level. If the games in this state are called into question, what's the effect? Our tourism suffers. And if our tourism suffers, what's the next thing? We're all going back to mining, except that you can't mine anymore with the EPA out there. So we have no business unless we make sure that the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission and even our legislators are actually looking out for the gambler, be it an advantage gambler, the ploppy on the street, the people who fly in from Oklahoma City. They need to know that that's right, and instead there's nobody out there representing their interests, and these are being written, and the laws are being written and applied for the casinos and the gaming interested people. We need to get back to a system that treats the board what it was originally intended, that to be a consumer protection agency to keep the corruption out of it and to keep the game straight up. So we're not getting that. And so the broad answer to Bob's question is we're dealing with a consumer protection agency that is divorced from the consumer. They're 3 steps away. They don't get to hear from the consumer. I'm probably the only guy out there representing the consumer. And when I go in on a gaming dispute, I've got everything stacked against me because these guys are sitting here as a general rule, especially in the last 10 years. The industry is looking to protect its industry, not protect the people who are using that industry and upon whom Nevada relies.
That's not happy news.
Well, we all live it, and you know it. You see what one of the big ones is, what is this where they get to kick out somebody who's a better gambler than they are? If you want to regulate gaming, it's a competition. Make sure that the people who are running gaming in this state, the casinos, know that they're in a competition, that they're in a poker game, and that they can't throw out everybody who is a good poker player and then rely on people who don't even understand the game. The housewife from Peoria, the steel worker from Kansas City.
Yeah, this is exactly what's going on with sports betting all across the country, right? So
I've seen this too, yes.
Yeah, you show that, you know that Wednesday comes after Tuesday and suddenly all you can bet is $2.14. I mean, literally, they'll limit you to these
you can't get your money down.
Yeah, and I said there was just this big bet bash in Las Vegas, which was kind of a convention of sports bettors, and I was saying to one of the guys, the thing to do is to get a senator or a representative as one of your beards. There's got to be one of those who loves to bet on sports, and wait till he sees that he gets limited to $5. He's going to go, what the hell is this? And that's how you can get laws changed, is by getting them personally involved in seeing how ridiculous it is.
But you're going up to okay, we have a true statement when we say we're Sin City, okay? This is the place people come to get away from, supposedly, all that holier-than-thou crap, okay? And you're looking to get a senator, Richard, under the circumstances you just laid out, to go out there and champion something that 30% of the electorate probably thinks is a sin.
Well, but
gambling. Is your senator, no matter what, going to be championing something that immediately disqualifies him to get the ballot check from 30% of the population? They can't do that, and I don't think they would. An example I'll give you is when Barack Obama ran for senator in Chicago, or in Illinois, because you run in the state, not the city.
Not when Chicago has most population. He ran in Chicago.
Not when Mayor Daley ran it.
Well, that's a ballot question, not a never mind. Yeah. So anyway, his main opponent was somebody who was pretty well respected in the state and was showing strong, and Barack's a newbie, and this other guy's a newbie to the political process. The Republican who ran against him was doing fine. And then, I can't say who broke it, but let's assume it was the Tribune. The headline story was, card counter running for Senate in our state. And that was one of the things he did. One of his avocations was he was a professional gambler and card counter.
Well, this is Blair Hull, who has been on the ballot for the Hall of Fame a number of times, who's at the Blackjack Ball every year.
He lost.
There were five other guys in the primary, though. That was. But
why was that on the front page? And what was the reason it was there? It was there because they were vilifying somebody who was smarter than casinos. Why? Because 30% of the electorate says the guy gambles. Oh my goodness. Well, that's not a good thing. That's not the way, but that is the way it works.
But that's also, I think, newspapers looking for, what's something we can write about now? Other than this guy's a CPA who's running for, you know what I mean, or some other.
But why should it be news? Okay.
Well, of course it shouldn't, but I mean, that's the nature of media these days.
Well, it is the nature of media, but isn't it a little bit I mean, I read the articles back at the time, and they weren't saying this guy brings his genius against the biggest companies in the world and walks away with money in his pocket. That wasn't the nature of the article.
Yeah, but I mean, but it was so absurd because he hadn't played since like the 80s. And, sort of a bigger story might be the same guy built a company and sold it to Goldman Sachs for $600 million.
I understand.
Yeah. I mean, like,
But I'm just pointing out that in the profession that we make our livings off of, you in certain ways that I can't do and never would be able to do, Bob with some math that I can't comprehend from Venus, but you still got that 30% of the electorate who is just going to have a visceral reaction. Then they're going to tune into Tammy Faye on Sunday, and the gambler is a bad person.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I brought it up is because I think that was one of the factors in getting it illegal to bar people in New Jersey was Tommy had got a representative as a big player, and once they barred him, he was like, what the hell is this? What do you mean we can't play because, we're using our brains? So
well, and it's interesting, in the Slade case that I did here, I lost in the Supreme Court trying to actually say that there was a duty of public accommodation. I lost 3-2, which was closer than anybody had ever come before. And then they granted rehearing, and on rehearing, one of the judges left or wasn't available. So now the decision was 2-2. That's how close we came. The district court said you can't, there's no right of public there's no duty to accommodate the public in casinos, etc. So the district court ruling against a tie stands, a tie on an appellate court. So eventually that appellate court went to 2-2. That's how close we came, but we didn't get it. From all the times I've been on this show that the idea that public accommodation has no corollary responsibility to accommodate is a ridiculous rule. It's contrary to the first 150 years of our country, and the only reason that they came up with this idea that a public accommodation can throw somebody out was to support the Jim Crow laws at the turn of the century. Okay, it was actually so. Right now, today, the only reason that you can't go into a casino if they say that they don't want your action or they want you to not come in, the only reason that happens is because of a racist policy at the turn of the century. Now, I'm dropping the race card, but I have the case law to prove that it's absolutely true. And the legislators and these people who continue to say that casinos don't have a responsibility or a duty to accommodate all comers, they're the ones who are relying on a racist history. I'm not saying they're racists, but certainly it is a racist history that caused that, and here we are today, and the best players are locked out because the casino doesn't have the cojones to put up their money against somebody else, but wants to leave it to the housewife with the nickels sitting at the slot machine after they convince them that, you don't bet one nickel, you got to bet 30.
Let's move on to another question. What are players' rights in international federal waters as a card counter, either on the ships that go back and forth to one port or on cruise ships?
What are their rights in what context?
Are you saying
I get the cruise ship.
But didn't we talk about this on the last time Bob was here?
I don't think we actually got to it, but the bottom line is their rights on international waters are to protest vehemently when they're told to walk the plank. Okay?
Oh,
So almost as good as an Indian casino, you're saying.
But
but at least it's not racist, huh?
But that ship has to come into port. Okay?
Eventually.
Yeah. So their rights, there's no Pacific Gaming Commission who set up regulations, laws, and rules. Okay. But their rights will be generally defined by the common law of the port where they work out of.
Not where the ship is registered?
No, well, there's some international stuff you can do vis-a-vis where the ship is registered, but try to get any kind of date in a Liberian court. Okay.
Well, that's the problem. But I mean, so like, let's say they do something that a casino in Nevada might do, like handcuff you and lock you in a room for 6 hours. You can sue them where the boat docks when you get off.
You could sue them where the boat docks. If Carnival Cruises has a huge corporate center in Boston, because so many cruise ships do go in and out of Boston. You could probably sue them in Boston. You can sue them at a center of commerce for the company, or certainly it makes sense to sue them where the boat docks. And I understand that the cruise lines have sort of accepted the idea that if you're taking Americans out to sea, they have to live up to the American standards of false imprisonment and things like that.
Yeah, but that does not mean that you have the right to play blackjack if they tell you you can't. That's not really a violation of your rights.
It's not a violation of your rights, but I think you could, and I don't know that anybody's tried this. Nobody's had me try it. I don't know that anybody would want to invest the money in this, but I am pretty darn sure that you can take their advertising and compare it to their ticketing and look at the express warranties that you get when you book that cruise, and you'd have a pretty good contract action once they come back to port if they barred you from playing blackjack.
Huh.
You've seen the posters. There they are. All the nice customers sitting around a blackjack table throwing in money. Under the universally accepted Uniform Commercial Code in the United States, that's a warranty. That's a promise. If you make a representation about a product or a service that you are offering, you have to live by it, and failure to live by it is actionable. And when they show people, happy people playing blackjack, they're telling you, you get to be a happy person playing blackjack on our cruise line. And when they tell you you aren't, they breach the warranty.
Next
Now,
question.
I'm sorry,
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to find a way to make that profitable or monetize it, or I don't want to use those words because we are talking breach of legal obligations here, but try and pencil that out to a point where it becomes viable to actually work that. You can't, because it's a contract action. There's no punitive damages. There's no attorney's fees. And your damages, to the extent they exist when you come to gambling, are largely what they call speculative, so you're not going to be able to get it. So you get your loss of enjoyment from being able to sit at a blackjack table. Fine, here's $100. You still got the sunshine, and the pool was open to you, and we got the best pina coladas in the world.
Next question. What should players do in a casino when approached by security in a polite manner? In other words, what are rules of thumb when security comes in?
Well,
It sounds like you're saying that security is being polite?
Yes,
Or he's asking about how he should be polite.
No, the players, well,
why should you do anything? I'm a little lost on the question.
Yeah.
Until you have anything on their agenda that infringes on your expectations, say hi, smile at them.
Okay.
I'm Bob. I'm from Kansas. Yeah, don't lie about the state you're from. That just gets you in trouble later.
I'm assuming they're coming to bar you. I mean, I'm thinking that's what the question is. And, my answer to that is get up and leave.
Yes, if you see what is going on as heat, quietly and calmly get up and walk out the door or walk towards the nearest exit. You should, if they try to engage you, sir, we want to talk to you. No, I have business. I have to get going. Well, you have all those tickets in your pocket. Yeah, aren't they cute? I'm leaving, please. Okay. Well, you have to stay. And now it's going to escalate, but then you have to stand on your rights. No, you don't get my identification because you want to remain anonymous. No, I don't want to come with you and chat. And no, I'm not going to wherever you want me to go. I'm going to the exit. Please leave me alone. And I'll tell you, about 90 times out of 100, it works. But when it doesn't work, I've got more than one example, some in litigation right now, where it really gets violent. For some reason, security officers who can't get your name, one, believe that they have some right to it, and two, will take it to a point that puts their employer at risk of punitive damages to get it. People beaten, people thrown to the floor. Had one in California where the video showed the guy with a foot up on each door jamb trying to push back. And when we got to the point where we're litigating it, why were you doing that? He wouldn't give us his ID. And we needed it. Why did you need it? Because that's our policy. Really? Where does that policy trump the idea that you don't put hands on people, you insane lunatic?
That was your question in court?
Actually, in context, my question would have not been anything other than that. It was, there might have been different words there,
yeah.
But the implication was you're an insane lunatic and you think that you can hurt people or put hands on people because somebody gave you a badge, which if they wrapped it in gold would be a nice little thing to sit in an Easter basket. Actually, and covered with chocolate.
Kind of right along these same lines, one of the questions we had was about a guy who was trying to cash out, and they wouldn't cash him out, and so he was arguing with them because it was less than 10,000, a lot less than 10,000, like 2,000 something. Anyway, finally the person in the cage says, I have to have a name and address. And he says, I'm not showing ID. And she says, I still have to have a name and address. So he says, okay. And he just gives her a fake name and a fake address. And she writes it down and cashes him out. And now she, I guess, creates a play. Oh, that was it. He had to have a player's card to cash out. And he's like, no, I don't. Anyway, he gives her the fake name and address. So she creates a fake player's card. And he says, I do not want a player's card account. And she's like, well, I already did it. It's in there now, And he's like, take it out. Now, admittedly, why is he arguing? Why didn't he just, But
it's an alias sitting in an unknown database. He doesn't have to fire.
Yeah, exactly. But his question was, do they have a right to create an account for you when you don't want one? Even if they're just calling you Joe Schmo, guy in a red shirt.
Yes.
They do.
Why not?
I don't know.
If I'm writing down your name and number and I go in the car and I go, friends of Bob, and Richard Munchkin shows up on there, did I violate any rule or law? I mean, think it doesn't get there. Okay. They can do pretty much whatever they want as long as they aren't infringing on one of your rights. Do you have a right to anonymity? Yes. Did you exercise it? Yes. So what are they violating? I don't think it's a real issue, and people shouldn't make issues out of things that aren't real issues. But
you can get mad over anything you want to.
Yeah, that's true, and so do they. And when you do it, when you take that attitude, and it escalates. Pretty soon somebody puts hands on somebody else. The trick from the gambler's side, and it's not a trick, the truism is never be the first guy to do that.
Yeah. Well, and the
Okay.
other thing is you want to be as forgettable as possible. So when you stand there for 10 or 15 minutes arguing with some minimum wage worker in a cashier's cage, all you're doing is making yourself more memorable to the people there.
Get the chips, put them in your pocket, and walk out the door.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's all you, that's what you do. Okay? Now, a couple of cases that I've been working, and they're working out pretty well too, is this idea that the casino will bring in the police to give a trespass warning, and then the police will get the ID, and there's a little bit of a misconstruction there, but certainly the police believe, and it is, and you're not going to, the police believe that if they ask for ID or your name and etc., you must give it. And there's arguments both ways. There's actually a pretty strong argument that unless they have reasonable suspicion of criminal activity based on articulable circumstances, you don't have to provide identification to the police. That's the Terry versus Ohio case, and probably everybody's heard of that. It's a Terry stop. Okay. But
now in that
but
case,
the problem is the police then give it to the casino.
right. Yeah.
And I have gotten Las Vegas Metro. They haven't put it in writing, but they have certainly admitted and allegedly told their personnel, you do not have the ability to give a casino the identifying information of a person you encounter at a casino without permission, which is as it should be. But honest to goodness, it took 8 years and 4 different cases for them to finally say, yeah.
And it's still going to happen.
It is. It happened 3 weeks later at the same casino after we got paid some money.
Jesus. And now it's a crime to lie to an FBI agent. Is it a crime to lie to a police officer?
Depends.
What's your name? And you tell them John Smith? I mean,
That would be a problem.
oh, really? Okay. See, good to know.
What's your name? And you say, okay, I'm Robert A. Nersesian. What's your name? And I say, Bob. They go, we want more. And I say, no. Okay, first, I didn't give my first name, obviously, and second, they didn't get any more. But your duty or responsibility would be to stand on silence. Don't make a misrepresentation.
Ah, okay. So just refuse to answer.
Don't refuse to provide a name and your right name if they have any argument that they have reasonable suspicion of criminal activity based on articulable facts. What's an articulable fact? It could be as slight as I saw you reaching into your pocket as you walked into the bank in a way that led me to believe you had a gun. Okay?
Okay. So it could be anything. I mean,
Almost, but
yeah.
It isn't everything, because the lead case on this is a case called Brown versus Texas. And there's been other cases since then, and I have had cases, and I have one right now where I've gotten partial summary judgment against the police because the reason they wanted the ID and they admitted it is we didn't know what this guy was doing there. That's not, I'm pounding that's not an articulable fact giving reasonable suspicion, okay? Because being on a sidewalk is something any American can do anywhere. And when they say he looked out of place, those are not what you call articulable facts leading to suspicion. That's articulable facts leading to a cop hunch, and hunches don't count.
Back when we were talking about security coming at you aggressively for wanting your ID or some other matter, what are the things that a player should absolutely not do?
I don't have an answer to that question. Sounds like I should, but it depends on who you are and what you're doing. If you're a player and you have 3 other games there and a team that's playing there, and you don't want them to have your name, for all practical intents, you should not, under any circumstances, give them your identification. At the same time, I've got another client who, when he's asked, has always given his ID. He's always played under his own name. He worked very hard to keep games alive and open, but did not try to play any games on the side we're talking about. He wouldn't always play under his player's card, but having a player's card sort of establishes you as a patron, which is very important for being able to cash chips and things. But the point is, he's worked in the industry for 20 years, has been very open about who he is and what he does, and while he's burned at some places, he's not burned. He is making a good living.
All right, next question. Some years ago on a previous show, Bob Nersesian mentioned a case where he was surprised to discover there was an audio from the floor as well as video. And this may not have been one of his cases. But
No, it was one of mine.
But
How was their audio?
Nobody knows.
No, nobody knows.
Honest to goodness, we all went after this. The casino's lawyers were like, "How'd you get audio?" I said, "You sent it to me." I said, "Where did this audio come from? Because you sent this to me." And they're going, "Holy crap, we have no idea." But yes, the interchange between the casino personnel and the person at the slot machine was clear as day.
Wow. And nobody knows where it came from.
At least, no, they really don't. I mean, the lawyers don't. They went to the casino. Maybe the casino's keeping something secret. I don't think that they thought there was audio on it when they provided it to me, because it didn't hurt me at all. And in some ways it helped me. So here I am with audio of the actual interaction. And they thought it might have been me not me, but my client who had somehow dubbed in on it. And the security officer who was there with taking the statement of the woman who was involved is like, "No, that's me. Those are our words. That's what was said." So there was no doubt it was audio, and nobody knows how. And what's your question, Bob?
Well, are there any laws regarding recording in the casino? I mean, either on the casino's part or the patron's part?
Not that I know of, other than the general laws, which are, you can turn on your cell phone. People have to. In Nevada, it's my understanding that people risk that you're recording when they engage in conversation with you. In
some states are two-party consent.
Some states are two-party consent. Maryland is absolutely two-party consent. But a case I did in Maryland said, if it is the police you're recording, okay, then regardless of Maryland's two-party consent rule, the Constitution gives you the First Amendment gives you the authorization to essentially audit and tape the police, and therefore Maryland's law does not apply to recording police officers.
Huh.
But otherwise, Maryland would be an example of a two-party consent.
Nevada's
state.
a one-party consent.
I believe Nevada's a one-party. I don't hold me to that. And like everything I say on this show, as I've said many times before, and I'm going to reiterate now, this is a public service without warranty, and lawyers make mistakes. I've made a mistake. Maybe
one already
today? No. Well, maybe. I don't know. But that's my point is, you got to don't take it with a grain of salt. It's an educated supposition, but it's not always correct.
All right. So the question that this player sent in is about the audio. It's like, since this was several years ago when you first had this conversation on the air, since then, have you come across further cases where audio is being done by casinos?
None. this was just that much of an anomaly. We thought it might have been just somebody having like a phone on or something like that. But I got to tell you, when you watch that audio is tied to that video.
Huh. Well, if they're done at the same time, you should be able to sync it without much problem.
You should, but it's always a problem. Okay? Things pop up. When let's say that there's a frazzle, if you will, an electronic frazzle on one of the recording devices that only is just a secondary blip. But the next thing you know, lips and words are, you're watching Godzilla in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't realize this was video. So this was video that had audio on it.
Yes.
Wow. Huh.
So my thought is that, no, I had a thought at the time, but now that I'm here sitting with you, I have no idea how that happened. I have hundreds and hundreds of tapes from the floor, and that was the only time it ever happened. And like I said, both sides of that litigation were like, where did this come from? It had to have come from the casino, obviously.
Yeah.
But
but also it sounds like it had to have been recorded with the video, and I can't imagine some guy in a room taking an audio and laying it over the video. I mean, you know what I mean? That would be very
But the
weird.
surveillance cameras are up in the air, and that's to focus in on one particular conversation would be tough.
this is interesting because what you said, I would have thought that would be very difficult too, but I now know that it is not impossible.
Oh, it's easy,
and
actually.
what I would direct you to is on YouTube, there's a video that is a person being held in a back room at Maryland Live Casino, and he had his cell phone recording. This is the case that said it's unconstitutional to forbid a citizen from recording the police because the police sued him for recording. Okay, and the federal judge said no.
I think I remember this. This is the guy who was handcuffed to a bench or something?
Well, he was forced to sit on a bench, and he had 2 cops and 4 casino guys telling him he can't leave, and he's just sitting here going, gentlemen, I don't know what you think you're doing here. You're holding me for card counting, right? Yes. Why do you think you can do that? Because this is our casino, and you were card counting in our casino. Watch the video. And it's my incredulity watching this, except for the fact that I've seen it 140 other times, was through the roof. There was absolute cluelessness. Both of these police officers, one of the police officers had the audacity to say, when he said, what crime have I committed? The guy says, you were card counting. And he goes, that's not a crime. And this guy said, there's an ordinance against that in Anne Arundel County. No, there wasn't. And he knew there wasn't. Okay? So, but then he said that he heard that that ordinance exists from the casino executive who, it was just a big, wow, that's a bad swear word. I'm not going to go there. It was a cluster something.
I can't figure out what the other word is. I have other questions, but first we're going to do some commercials. We're at some disadvantage today because my computer was accidentally left at home when I came in to tape the commercials. So I'm doing some of these from memory. And I apologize to our sponsors. We value you very much, and you deserve better than this. And it doesn't happen very often. Now, the South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anyone else has. The promotion in April for slot and video poker players is play 500 points a day from Monday through Thursday, and you go to a kiosk and you spin a wheel. And the prizes are, they can be mystery gifts. They can be cash up to, I think it's $50 in free play. It's not cash, it's free play. And there's food awards, and there's points. Like you might get, if you got 10,000 points, that's worth $30, which could be redeemed for cash. Once a day in Monday through Thursday. Normally, our commercials for Blackjack Apprenticeship are done by them, and so they're just plugged in. For this week and next week, Colin Jones, who runs Blackjack Apprenticeship, asked me to mention that they're having boot camps in Las Vegas in May, and there are some openings. And a boot camp is about card counting, and you get lots of practice, and whatever level you'll be at a higher level when you leave. You'll have some advanced players come by and check out and tell you what some of your gaps are. So contact Colin at blackjackapprenticeship.com, and if you're at all interested in improving your blackjack counting, this is an excellent source. We've had a number of people on the air who very much swear by the Blackjack Bootcamp. Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. There are hundreds of games you can practice, so you can do them before the casino. Next time I have my computer in front of me, we will give 2 games of the week, because right now I don't have the details on a particular game, and making them up little mistakes can happen from when it's done from memory. So I owe videopoker.com, and we will pay that debt. All right, we are back with Bob Nersesian. Last time you were on, there were a lot of questions about being trespassed. One of the questions we got since then is, do casinos have to prove you were trespassed? And what is the process for them proving that?
Well, the answer is yes, but the idea that proof is some talisman is sort of weird. Okay?
Yeah,
let's look at different contexts where this comes up. One, you're suing the casino and they're saying you were previously trespassed. Okay? To prove you were previously trespassed, they put in evidence. Evidence that you were previously trespassed is Stan Smith, the local gendarme of the casino, gets up there and says, I told him in 1977 to get out of my casino and never come back. That's evidence. Did you prove it? Well, if you have other evidence that in 1977 you were actually living in Kuala Lumpur and you had no travel to even the United States, let alone Las Vegas, I would suggest that overall it's not proven, but a jury is still free to believe Stan Smith and say, yeah, they proved it, and now you lost. That's proof. And
but also, I think this guy is thinking, like, they don't have to prove it to you when they tell you to get out. And the other thing is, let's say that, yes, they have to prove it, but that means you got charged with trespassing, got arrested, and now you're at the point where you get to a court and they have to prove they trespassed. Do you really want to go that far? I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do. Yes. And the answer is maybe. Why is it maybe? Because if they took you into a back room and held you in handcuffs and you had never been trespassed before, that's a pretty strong false imprisonment case.
Sure.
So you want to prove that, you want to force them to prove that they trespassed you, but their proofs are against your evidence. And, it's whatever the trier of fact says. And you brought up the other one that I was dealing with, thinking about here, which is the criminal case. Do they have to prove, to convict you of criminal trespass, does the state have to prove that you were previously warned not to be on that property, generally? And the answer is yes, they do. And let's look at how criminal proofs work. I'll give you an example. I had a case where my client had the hell beat out of him, okay, on camera, okay. And there was a security guard who was about 345 pounds, I would guess, and had arms the size of
tree trunks.
Not an elm tree, but certainly a good solid apple tree. Okay, and that was the guy who attacked him without provocation. Okay, and we were at trial, and they didn't think I would have the video, but I had worked it out and I had subpoenaed it. It's very hard to get video if you're the one trying to get it, but there are ways. So we got it, and it was all arranged, and it showed up the day of trial under a subpoena, and it was played while this guy was on the stand. He had testified, I was attacked by your 160-pound advantage gambler, and he tried to shove me out of the way. Okay. and then that's the prosecutor's case, and now it's my turn, and I'm cross-examining, and I ask for the video. I pop it in. I hadn't even seen it yet, and there it was, just like my client told me. He was trying to leave a restaurant and was literally grabbed and thrown against a steel gate and then handcuffed and hauled off. He didn't do anything aggressive towards this guy. To the judge's credit, the judge looked at the prosecutor and said, did you see this? And she says, not till just now. And she says, did you hear what your witness said? She goes, yes. And she says, do you have any reason to believe that this video is not authentic? And she says, no. And yes, that is the security guard, and that is the guy who is here charged. Okay.
Do you have a motion to make to this court?
No. See, I don't.
You have a number in mind.
And I'll tell you why in a second, why that doesn't work that way. But the judge said, this case is dismissed. I didn't have to make a motion.
Oh, this was the criminal side.
Yeah, this is the criminal matter. This is the first time we've seen this video. And the judge says this case is dismissed. And we're here talking about how you prove things. And here's what the prosecutor said. Your Honor, you have direct testimony from that gentleman that he was attacked by that gentleman, pointing to the 160-pound, and that is the testimony of Mr. Tovia. Oh, said his name.
It's public record, right?
Yeah, it was also on the front page of the RJ.
Yeah.
Not the RJ, the Sun. But the point here is that she did have direct evidence that my client had battered.
Boy, that's balls to say that after seeing the video.
And the direct evidence was the testimony of the security guard. That is direct evidence. And she then says, and you also have direct evidence, the video, that it was Mr. So-and-so who was attacked by the security guard. It is your choice which evidence to believe.
She's saying that to the judge.
Yes.
Wow.
Here's the thing. She's right.
Well, she is right, and the judge made the choice.
No, the judge is supposed to wait till the end of the trial, but I'm not picking on the judge. When you're sitting in this situation, you are being abused by the process is being abused by the casino who is trying to get this gentleman charged with a crime. In fact, that itself, under these circumstances, would be a crime and is certainly a tort.
I'm assuming the casino settled that one pretty quickly?
Not pretty quickly. They fought like hell.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
But that was back at a time before let's say the street cred of gamblers that sue casinos existed. That was far enough back where these casinos still thought we can do anything we want to anyone at any time on our property. And so they were fighting pretty hard, but yes, it eventually resolved to the satisfaction of all concerned.
Which means you cannot tell us what the number, how many zeros were in the number. Is that what that means?
Actually, I have a question about that. It seems like the casinos always want to put that in a non-disclosure about the...
Absolutely.
But what would happen if somebody said, you know what, I'm not going to settle on it unless I can make it public? Do you think the casinos would just go to the wall?
They do.
Really?
I've got six. I think I've got 6 with substantive money that are not subject to confidentiality agreements.
Yeah, you come on this show and say, yeah, there was this case and we got $200,000 out of it.
But it has to be one of the 6.
Sure. Yeah.
This had to do with Arizona and little plastic figures. And
Oh, well, but that wasn't the casino, right? You sued the individuals?
That one was because at least for part of that case, the litigation was against the local constabulary, the Gila County Sheriff, the Arizona Gaming Commission, and there was another one in there too. And those are police, okay? And Arizona at the time had a statute that said public officials settling litigation cannot demand or cannot enforce any confidentiality provisions because the public have a right to know. Okay, a lot of states have that. Nevada's up in the air, but Nevada will generally not demand a confidentiality agreement if you're settling. Well, for one thing, it's got to go in front of the city council or other public bodies to get the kind of money we're talking about. So, yeah. So a lot of settlements that deal with state agencies will not have a confidentiality agreement. Maryland apparently is different. The state has decided that in Maryland, and for anybody in Maryland, please write your legislator. The state of Maryland has apparently decided that the public officials who commit actions which cause the public to have to pay off somebody who was hurt because of what their public employees did are not entitled to know how much of their taxes went to this guy, went to a injured party because of the actions your public employee took. Do you see how silly that is? And how off the wall it is to actually have a law that says you don't have to tell your constituents how much you spent because we're idiots.
Yeah.
That one case where the 320-pound guy was abused by the 160-pound guy, after the tape rather conclusively proved he was lying on the court, do you have can you go after him personally as opposed to as an employee?
That is something that courts are split on. I don't, because to do that, the fight is incredible. And to get over the top, there's no cost-benefit analysis because you still have the torts there. Specifically, I'm talking about something called the litigation privilege, which is supposed to be an absolute privilege, but sometimes with perjury it doesn't reach that standard, but you still have to prove essentially perjury, which is intent. And the one I just said, what are the odds that I'm going to have that guy on the stand at some later point in a civil case and his answer is not, oh, I must have misrecalled? Because perjury requires an intent. And
security guards don't usually have deep pockets, so
there's that. And I don't want to be that. Some security guards also don't have deep thinking ability.
All right. Thank you, Bob Nersesian. We have some good news and some bad news, and they're both the same. And that is
The bad news is Bob left his phone on.
Probably somebody.
we thank Bob Nersesian. He's always fun. And we have good news and bad news for the audience. And the bad news is we don't have time for recommendeds today. And the good news is we don't have time for recommendeds today.
Some of our listeners, I get feedback all the time saying they love the recommended. So,
Well,
I'm going to jam mine in. Don't Look Up. It's a movie on Netflix. It was nominated for some Academy Awards. Very funny, about a comet coming to destroy the Earth.
and nobody believes it.
Oh no, it's how the president and everybody reacts. Like, it's more about
It's politics.
the PR and the donors, and yeah, it's pretty funny.
I watched it. It's a good watch, but it's also a tale for the ages.
Yep.
All right. So, very good. So, Richard snuck in the recommended, even though I implied that he didn't have time for it, but I'll get over it. Thank you, Bob Nersesian. Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.
Thank you, guys.